welcome back to another episode of CATV Tech Talk. I'm your host, Drew. I'm here with Jesse. Jesse, how's it going?
What's up, man?
Living the dream.
Yeah, dude. It's been another week, hasn't it?
Oh, God. All right, today's episode, how to attack the install. We're going to cover how we attack installs from the beginning pretty much to the end. From the time your tires roll up in front of that house to you're hopping in your truck and going to that next job.
Yeah, man. I hope some guys can get something out of this. Maybe pick up a tip or two, maybe speed up, something like that.
Absolutely. I think I'm going to put my own little disclaimer in here as well. This is my personal way on how I did things. This is what worked well for me. Was it necessary the way that you were supposed to do it? Probably not. Was it always 100% the right thing to do? I doubt it. But again, these were the steps that I took that made my day go quicker and that much easier and really less frustrating.
That I'll put the same disclaimer in there.
Just might as well cover our asses now before we start getting all those messages flowing in. I mean, we like the mail, but not so much the hate mail.
Right, I'm with you, dog.
All right. So the first thing we do when we roll up to a house, what do?
Well, you park, you put your cones out.
All right. And see, this is where that disclaimer I'm going to use right out of the gate. I very rarely put that cone out unless I was on a main street. If I was on a side street where there was no traffic, I have to say I wasn't the greatest about putting a cone out.
The only time I didn't put a cone out, my supervisor parked 2 blocks over, and he appeared while I was hooking up. I was on a pole on gaffs, and he appeared like Jesus out of nowhere. And my van doors, the back doors are wide open, and my cone's not out. And he goes, "Well, where's your cone?" I said, "Well, it's in the truck." Well, he goes, "Well, how'd it get there?" I said, "Well, obviously it opened the door and jumped back in there." And he just shook his head and walked away.
I'd have been like, holy shit, it ran away. Somebody took it.
That motherfucker opened the door and got back in is what he did.
But is that the same cone that frickin' took you 7/16 too?
Yeah, it probably took 2 or 3 of them. No, man, it depends kind of on where you're at, where you're doing an install too, right? So if you're in a house, most of the time you go to the front door, you knock, you talk, you say, "Hey, how are you, ma'am? I'm so-and-so. I'm here to install your internet and cable, blah, blah." You go in, she'll tell you, or he, she, whoever, we got a TV here in the living room. We got a TV in the bedroom. We want the modem in this back bedroom where our computer is, for instance, right?
Yep.
So, you put your booties on and you kind of shimmy through the house and say, "Okay, I need to do this, 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 and this." And, that's kind of the intro to any install. It's pretty quick and simple.
So were you one of those technicians where as soon as you walked through that door the first time, you actually had your tool bag with you?
No, hell no.
Okay, and I was the same way, but I had technicians that they'd be wearing their tool belt the second they walked through that front door, which is fine. I'm not knocking that by any means, but to me, I rather walk through that front door, get the full story instead of being like, "All right, ready to work. What's going on? Just show me. I don't care to really listen to what you say."
I was more on what needed to, while I was in there. I took a good 5 minutes, maybe, I'm just estimating 5 minutes to see, okay, well, I got to put a line in this bedroom, the line in here, I don't know where it goes, so I'm going to replace this one. The other one back here, I seen as I walked in is wrapped from the ground block, so maybe I can keep that. I'd kind of get an idea of what I had to do in the house and go from there. And I'd use that time for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And actually, I'm going to call this our CATV Tech Talk tip of the episode, at least Tech Talk tip 1. At this point in the install of doing the walkthrough, we're going to talk about equipment later on in the show, but I think it's important to listen to what your customer, I mean, obviously our work order to what our customer want isn't always necessarily accurate, but make sure that you have that equipment for that job. I cannot say the amount of times I've even myself have done it, or I've watched techs do it, where you get there, you assess the job, you know what you need to do, you run the drop, you do all your AOs, so on and so forth. But then you get to your equipment part and you're like, ah, shit, I'm missing this one box. So I think definitely after finding out what your customer definitely wants is the time to make sure that you have that correct equipment.
That I love that because I never fucking did that.
Neither did I, and that's why I feel it's such a
man. And I used to work in a damn like middle of nowhere cow field pastures with trailers in the middle of nowhere. I swear that was my area. And if I needed something, dude, I had to drive 45 minutes to get it. So I probably should have used that tip when I was a tech. But you know, what the fuck ever. It is what it is.
I was relatively close to my shop. Well, no, I can't really say that. It all depends. I could be anywhere between, right on top of the shop or an hour away. An hour was really the farthest I ever went. But yeah, I mean, I would pretty much do the same thing, though. I would roll up on my customer's house. I'd always kind of look to see if there was a drop, but I would never walk around the house until I made customer contact. That was the first thing I would do. And just like you said, I would end up walking around the house with the customer and seeing exactly what I would need. I'd kind of make a mental, or if it was a big enough install, take out my phone and make a quick list of the things I'd have to bring in with me. What kind of AOs they need, if I have to replace the AOs, if I can replace the AOs, if they're, ones that are wallfish that I don't have the opportunity to replace. But again, it was more of just assess and then attack. But right after that, I'd go outside and I'd start at the tap. I'd say is probably the best place to start. Would you agree?
Yes and no.
Okay. So I have to say my different opinions.
We'll do an episode on this later on about talking about trouble calls.
Yep.
And I'll mention this later again. But the way I did an install is I did all the inside work because it was what I really dreaded, if that makes sense.
But
then
before you continue though, if you had a brand new install and the customer didn't have a drop, would you still be doing the same thing?
Yeah, I'd hang it afterwards.
Okay.
And I know that's probably bad for the simple fact that the tap could be dead.
Well, that was what I was gonna. And I was kind of saving that for the end, but
no, I got you. It's probably bad because the tap could be dead. There's a million different issues there. I could get to the tap, and then I'd have to hang a two-way there because there's not any tap space or whatever, right? And then I'd have to turn in a system call, and then I'm arguing with, like, hey, can you get out here because I can't get this thing to pass home health or whatever. So there's a lot to that why you should start at the tap. I figured, okay, I don't want to crawl under this shit, but I have to. So I was just like, I'm going to knock it out and get it done. But like on an average job, like if it was like a little short drop, I may just go ahead and hang it and then check levels and then go that way. But 99% of the time, I'm fairly certain that I would just knock out the inside stuff where I'd have everything hanging there. So when I hung a drop, I could just tie it together and then hook everything up.
So I'm going to say for our new technicians, don't listen to Jesse.
On that, don't listen to me.
In my opinion, you immediately start at the tap because how are you supposed to know what's at your ground block if you don't check out of the tap first? And not to mention, like you said, Jesse, if your tap's not lit up or maybe the neighbor has water damage in their drop, which is causing water to get up in the tap, and now the tap's damaged. And like you said, now you're struggling to get out. It's kind of almost like I said, my first rule is after you do that assessing, make sure you have the equipment. Well, this is kind of the same concept. Make sure you have your signal out of that tap. So you're not sitting there waiting on the plant technician to come after you're done doing everything, when if you do it when you first show up, you'll have plenty of stuff to do in the meantime while you're waiting on that plant to show up to fix that problem.
That's true too. But I will say this. I don't know if it was different in my area to your area. Regardless, you're still going to do the damn install. So it ain't like, it's going to make a shit because like you call your supervisor and be like, look, I really need somebody out here. My return's a 51 out of this tap. Well, it'll lock on, man. Just put it on a two-way. It'll lock on. They'll get it fixed tonight. oh wait, well you're gonna scream at me tomorrow when my, at back then the upstream transmit number, you're gonna scream at me tonight when it reads 56 or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
So you're still gonna do the job. I feel like, and like you said earlier, how we did things isn't necessarily the correct way always, isn't necessarily, by the book. It's what worked for us.
Yeah.
And what worked for me was getting all the lines ran, and I would basically take them all and I'd wrap them in a loop so I didn't lose them. Like if I drilled a hole in the block or whatever and brought all of them out the block. And then I would go ahead and I'd mount my house box. I'd run my ground, all that stuff. And then I would go to the tap and run the drop. And 99% of the time, I ran a drop on an install. I will say that. The only time I wouldn't, if there was like a reasonably new, like 11 drop hanging there or something. But 99% of the time I would. Because if you look over time, you're going to get QC'd on the visual of your install, right?
Yep.
And if you leave a drop hanging there, it's got fucking moss and shit growing on it. It's been there a while. And if it's not going to take you 2 hours to replace it, I don't see why you don't. Because most systems require you to go to the tap anyway to put a new tag on, write the address and all that shit. And while you're there, terminate all the tap ports. They QC you on a lot of things. So you got to go up there anyway. You might as well take one with you.
Yeah, yeah. I always try to keep that stuff on my climbing belt with me. So when I went up to the tap, I was ready to go no matter what.
Yeah, no, I had like 10,000 tags. I think we talked about this when we were talking about what we wore in our organization, like what was on our belt. And I had like 10,000 drop tags. And what I would do is I would take a picture of it, right, with the number. And I had a marker in there, and I'd write, 601, right? For instance, that's the address, 601, and I'd tag it, and I'd hook it up and all that shit. Yep. And then when I got back to the truck, when I went, remember when you used to close the job is when you'd put like the tag information on?
Yeah, it had the 3 little spots where you could put the 3 different up to 3 tag numbers in it. Yep. CSG, and the old CSG.
CSG, yeah, that's it. God. So I would keep a picture, and that way I would know what to put in there at the end of the day, because my boss was kind of a stickler on that.
It depended it depends where it was. If you were up on a tap and you could see, if there was 2 drops going to the tap, a house on your left, a house on your right, and you could see them visually, they didn't really care too much. If you did it in a lockbox in like the city of Lowell, different story. But yeah, I mean, I hate saying it. I'm ass backwards, man. Tap to ground block. And again, I feel I'm 90% sure when they, and again, I don't want to say just CU being Comcast. I'm sure other companies in their training, I'm pretty sure that's what they start with too. They say, go to the tap, make sure you have great signal there. Because again, you don't know what you're supposed to have at ground block if you don't know what you have coming out of your tap.
Well, like that's true too. But like here's another instance. About 95% of the jobs you go to have a drop running to the house, right?
Yep.
Okay. Something I would do as I'm like mounting my house box or whatever I was doing, right? I would just check levels off that one. And I'm like, okay, well, this sucks. Like if I popped up and it's like -17, I'm going to go up there right then, and I'd probably take a drop with me just in case.
Yep.
This is on an install. This is not a trouble call. This is for an install.
Correct. We're talking installs.
And I would go up there, and I'd be like, oh, okay, well, this drop's bad, or oh, this tap port's bad, or oh, it's just bad, right?
Yep.
So that was kind of like where I used that from. So it wasn't that I ever did it blind, if that makes sense.
Yep.
It was just that was the way that I felt I could be more efficient, if that makes any sense at all.
Well, and like we said in the beginning of the episode, this is how we did it. This is how we found that it worked. So that worked for you versus it doesn't work for me. I felt that I had to go from tap to, because again, like you said, you'd roll up on a job and 90% of the drops I'd see. And actually, I'm going to put another disclaimer in there. This is not my entire career. I had lots of ups and downs. Sometimes, I'm not going to lie, which I'm sure like a lot of our listeners, you just sometimes don't care about what you're doing. The job gets rough sometimes, and you kind of get in that. I always said it was that dark cloud of cable that got over your head. But so I'm by no means going to sit here and pretend, hey, I was a perfect tech, because I'm sure plenty of people would say I'm not, but I did not always replace the drop when I should have. Now, needless to say, I did have times in my career where I did put effort in, especially towards the end. And I put more of the effort in because I saw that it saved my numbers, it saved my time. If I was going up to that tap anyways to check signal or to change the fitting, why not bring a new drop up there with me? Like you said, unless it was something astronomical or it was going to suck up a huge amount of time, I just replace it. It was kind of like my guarantee of, well, at least no matter who goes back there, I covered my ass. I'm good at least up to the drop, unless I fuck something up or screwed up a RG11 connection or anything like that. But
I've done that. I did that a few times back in the day, and I was so pissed off.
I've been lucky. I've only had a very, very, very minimum. But
well, you remember those fittings that the pin was already, the center conductor was already popped out on them, like a long time ago. Like you had to just pray you made connection. You really didn't know.
I know.
Like I felt so great about the ones that came out where when you got it right, the pin popped up. You remember that?
Yeah, but I've also put it in wrong and had that pin pop up. Maybe I just suck at making them. I don't know if I can know.
Yeah, you just fucking suck, man.
But like I said, I would replace the drop anyways. Brand new P hook on the side of the house. Brand new ground block. Brand new ground clamp. I would, if it was a brand new install, especially towards the end with wireless boxes and Mocha, especially if you knew the AOs were good or you could put brand new AOs in the home. It just made sense. You had the time, replace everything. So towards the end, it made more sense to me. Brand new install. They're paying for brand new product. Just cover your ass. Do it from point A to point B.
Well, I feel like it's more like I said, we are talking about installs. So as an install, I feel like it makes more sense to me to just actually install everything from tap to device. That way, really, you can't miss anything, and you're going to spend twice as much time going backwards trying to say, well, this one could work. Oh wait, no, that it might work. Let me see if I, like trying to piece shit back together. Does that make sense?
I understand. Yeah, exactly. 100% makes sense. I worked with technicians in the past that they were very much so those guys that they'd bring their meter into the trouble call and they'd figure it out in a second. Versus you'd have other techs that sit there and reverse engineer the entire system and do the same thing with installs, which again, it's vice versa and it almost works the same way. Instead of sitting there reverse engineering it, just replace it. Because by the time you put all that effort into it, you could already be halfway done replacing it. And that goes with some trouble calls too, which again, we're not going to get into those because we are talking about installs, but sometimes it's easier just to start over. From point A to point B, where all that cable goes to. Every path it takes, every split, every connection. You can back that up. You can put your name on it.
And also, while we're talking on this point here, if you go to a home and, you've already did your walkthrough, you're at the ground block now and you're determining, okay, well, I got to hang a drop. I got to do this. I got to do that. You can almost look at the side of the house and you could say, okay, I got to cut this shit out.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's so obvious a lot of times. And this goes back to something I said a couple episodes back. You got to take pride in whatever you're doing.
Absolutely. If it don't look pretty, just replace it.
Well, I mean, if you're installing it, you would want to install something the way that you would want it done at your house.
Yeah.
You don't want the horror stories that people have on cable techs are guys that, fuck this, it'll work. We'll hook it up. And then the next day you got a trouble call there. And then that guy's replacing everything on a trouble call. You don't have the time to do it. It's just, you might as well just cut the shit out and start over.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I mean, and again, if we were to have, actually, I'm going to put this as CAV Tech Talk tip number 2 of installs. I believe that the feed line going into the home should always be replaced. I feel that is sometimes a bitch. Sometimes you end up regretting doing it. I feel like it's where a lot of repeats come from. And I feel like it's that mini AO that everybody tries to avoid replacing for some reason. They never want to rerun that cable from the ground block to the splitters in the basement.
So in your area, was that a norm of how things were wired?
So yes, if you were to go to an average single story, and again, this is all aerial, not underground, not a trailer. It would go to the P-hook on the side of the house. It would travel down with power, follow the same path. It would come down. It would hit a drip loop to a ground block, and then drip loop off the other side of the ground block, and it would only probably go about, I mean, you'd try to get into the basement of the house as quick as you could from there. So you had minimum wire on the outside. But yeah, it was pretty much down to a ground block and then right into the house after that.
So a lot of houses were wired all home run to the basement.
No, not necessarily. But going into the house, the feed line. So don't get me wrong. It wouldn't necessarily always go into the basement. You'd have it sometimes go up to a ground block, and then maybe it would go, 3 feet down the siding in under a window into that living room. But then the splitter would be there, and then it would feed, maybe a modem, or it would branch off to it, so on and so forth. But I still feel like that feed line that went into that living room, it was just those, again, it's more specific to my area. It was always one of those lines that never got replaced, and it always had water damage on it because over the years you get water-filled drops. And it would backfeed into the house, but guys would just be replacing the drops. They wouldn't go past the ground block and think of that. So again, I feel like that's a very, very important part, especially with a brand new install, is to replace that line that goes from your ground block to that first splitter.
See, like most of the time now my supervisor, when I was actually peaking and doing really well as a tech, was maybe the biggest, he might as well have been Hitler of cable, right? Like,
I'm pretty sure I've heard you actually use that term specifically for this guy before.
And I loved him. Don't get me wrong. I loved him. Okay, I did. I didn't take his shit like a lot of people did. I'd just be like, yeah, fuck it, whatever, dude. But he couldn't really ever really get mad at me because I always did my job, right?
Yep.
But no matter what I did, it was never good enough.
Yeah.
So I think it was like a reverse psychology thing where he had me doing more than I probably needed to because I was trying to outdo him, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the way he wanted things done is he wanted, we had to have a tag at the tap. Every one of the open ports had to be terminated. They had to have a grommet, a weather boot on every port. He would use binoculars and take points off your QCs for shit like that.
Yeah, see, and then I would have called him out on his laziness, told him to get on a ladder and really
yeah, good luck on that one.
Rocks at your own glass house, man.
Where your span clamp was, where if you left enough climbing space, that was a big deal. And then
so you don't box the pole in.
Right, yeah. And when you got to the house, did you put your P-hook or, in a good enough spot where it's low enough under power, but did you get enough clearance, And he told me one time that he had a reach pole that had a measuring tape on it, and he would reach up and then kind of get an idea if I had it. He was a real stickler, dude, almost off the wall, and he wanted the drop to come down. You'd mount your box. You had to ground to the number 6 if there was one there. That was your first option. But then that.
Hold on, say that again.
You'd have to ground to the number 6 if that was if that was available, right? He hated.
Hold on, this is another northern versus southern moment. What the fuck are you talking about?
The number 6 that comes out of the bottom of the power meter.
Nope, don't have a clue of what you're talking about.
Put a split bolt on it.
On the number 6, are you talking about 6 gauge copper ground wire?
That comes out of the bottom of the meter pan.
Maybe I've just never heard that term for it then. So would you call it a 6?
Number 6. I've always called it that.
Number 6.
It was in the damn Comcast manual. It says number 6.
No, and I'm not doubting you. I've just never heard anybody put it that way. And see, up again, being from the Northeast, maybe it's different up here. A lot of our all of our ground wires that come out of the bottom of our meters are in conduit most of the time.
Okay. Wait,
most
there.
of the time. I can't
So
say
what
all the
was your
time.
first option to ground?
We always went to the electrical meter, which
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The number 6 comes out of the
no.
electrical meter pan.
So we actually had the clamps that bit the side of the meter, which I come to find
See,
out.
we weren't allowed to use them.
See, and I keep hearing that, but we never got enough gripe up north to have them take it away from us, I guess. They never really chewed us out for it.
We had power companies going behind us and taking them off.
And I heard that too, but I actually never came across that. I'd never had any that looked like they were ripped off. I'm sure there was, I wish I knew, and this is why I said don't go based off of what I said, because what I do is definitely probably not right. I don't remember what Comcast actually required out of the gate.
What I was getting at with that was we would come down, right? We had to put a ground block. This was before, I said in the last couple episodes before that we used to be able to ground to splitters. Well, then of course they come out with that BRIS standard, so then you had to start installing the ground block and blah blah blah. Well, your ground block, your first option to ground would be the number 6 coming out of the bottom of the meter pan. Well, if there wasn't one, our number 2 option would be a mass clamp where it'd go around the power mass.
Yep.
Have you ever seen those? They wrap.
Yep. Pipe clamp.
That was that I called it a mass clamp, but that was
well, yeah, that's probably the correct term for it. I always just called it a pipe clamp, but
that was our number 2 option. And very seldom were we allowed to use those corner clamps or the ones that bit the front of the meter pan. So and he was a stickler about that too, my supervisor. So I was already in the mindset number 6 or the mass clamp. Well, then on new build houses, they were coming out with those inter-system bonding terminals, those where there was the number 6 and it was grounded, and then there was a spot for the cable and the phone and whatever all on one, right? You remember those?
Yeah, no, because that became a new standard up here as well. We just call them little bus bars. But I know exactly what you're talking about. The ground wire would actually go through the bus bar, and it would have about 6 terminals on it. You take a plastic cap off with one single screw, and it had about 5 or 6 different size holes for different gauge wires. That's a new standard up here as well.
Well, what I was getting at from there, where you were talking about a feed line, all right? Yep. But we weren't allowed, we weren't supposed to. I probably did at some point, like run a feed line in through a crawl space and then run everything to one spot and mount it or something. But he wanted everything home run outside.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. We try to hide everything as much as we could.
Like we would have, we had paddle bits where we could bore holes big enough to run everything, right? Like 5 outlets out one big hole. And we would bring them up and then like take the big, we got like the great big screw clips, the great big ones. You know what I'm talking about? The big metal ones. And we would attach all of them at one time, like up the wall, up into the house box. And that was like our requirement where I was at. Now I'm not saying I didn't ever run just a feed line to a 4-way or something up under a trailer or a house or something. Yeah. But that was like our requirement. He wanted everything was home run to one spot, yada yada. And we got QC'd so hard that a lot of guys are just fuck it, we'll just do it. But a lot of times, if you think about it, we didn't do as many jobs probably as you guys did either, because we were required so much of. We had to do this, and this. Everything's got to be home run here. So we didn't do near as many jobs as you probably did, but we had really high standards on what we were required to do.
Yeah, we didn't have any none of those bonding clips that you talked about. I would end up taking a Cat 5 clip that had a screw in it, and I'd throw a zip tie through it, screw it to the house, and then zip tie the lines to that. So after we hit the ground block, we go into the house under the trailer or into the house box, and we hit our splitters next. Like you said, your old system required you to do home runs. I feel like that's another important thing is if you have the opportunity to home run as much as possible, take that time and do it because it saves way more hassle in the back end.
Yeah, and something you mentioned earlier that, you guys, you said you didn't do wall fishes, right?
We did not. It was not allowed. Comcast, from how, again, this is how it was explained to me. Comcast was not insured to do wall fishes up in this area.
Well, see, that's another thing too. Like, it's it's kind of hard, like, depending on how the house is built. Like, if you have, like, say you got two story, it's like a 3-story house.
Yep.
Well, on the second story you got an attic, and then on the third story you got an attic, right?
Yep.
Like, somewhere along the way you're going to have to put a splitter, right? You're to get from one to the other.
Yep.
Something's, so there's just depends on how the houses are built. So what we're saying is not necessarily like standard, because like the situation's different everywhere, right?
Yeah, every house is a completely different scenario, unless it's one of those nuclear neighborhoods that was all built at the same time.
Yeah, and all those most of them are ran to a panel. Like, you have most new builds are kind of set up like you said. Like, they'll run like, all the underground utilities will be underground. Then you'll have your 1 or 2 feed. Most of them have 2 feed lines that I've seen that feed to a panel, and then in the panel you kind of set it up however you want. Like, when they started putting out those Unity gain amps, which I think are they still being used? You've been out in the field since me.
So again, I was out in the field almost up to about a year ago now. They they were in a funny transition with them. The problem was guys were using them like candy, which I understand why. You throw it in and it just did wonders as far as you didn't have your signal loss like you had before. Problem is they abused it and nobody checked for ingress. They threw these things everywhere and it was just destroying plant. So last I heard, if you wanted a amplifier, you would need to go into your supervisor's office and ask them for a amp. They would give you a couple of amps, send you on your way. That way, if you were flying through them, your supervisor would be giving them to you. So he'd be like, he or she would be, what's going on? Why are you going through so many amps? So I think they were trying to find out who was just throwing them in everywhere they could.
Well, if the plant itself is working properly and you got a 4-outlet install, you don't need one.
Yes,
okay,
I agree.
When you get to a 5-outlet install, it depending on where you are in the system and depending on what your system gives you. Like, if you get 6-ways, I don't know that I haven't worked in a system in my entire career that actually got a 6-way, right?
I did. We got them. They took them
But
away after Briss, but
yeah, I've never had them. But we're talking about across the country, Canada, Egypt, wherever the hell we're talking to right now. Somebody somewhere has got 6-way splitters, right?
Yeah.
Depending on where you are in the plant, say you're running off the 11 tap over here we're screaming and we got a pretty good return, our levels are high and we're good. We probably wouldn't need an amplifier. Where you get in those funky situations, you would, you're running off a 23 tap, you got a 5-outlet install. That would be beautiful situation for a Unity gain amp. But if you use it correctly, everything's clean. You're not going to amplify noise going back into the system. So if they're used the right way in the right situations, I don't have a problem with them.
Yep.
Because like even in that situation, like say it's a 6-outlet install and the modem's going in the same room as a box, a DTA or whatever, you could split that one off of that Unity gain amp. You're not really losing anything.
No.
So in the right scenario, in the right situation, they're good. But if the plant's running well and, depending on how many outlets you got, most of the time I don't feel like you even need one.
Yeah, like you said, I think it's all situational. I mean, we talk about all these different steps and they're each different in their own ways depending on where you're doing the install. If it's MDUs, you're probably not going to end up using amplifiers and MDUs unless it's that outlet right behind the TV because the MDU is super old. But if it's a brand new MDU, usually they're pretty hot coming out of the taps. They build them pretty good. So you're not really using amplifiers there so much.
Yeah, or at the same time of that, in like you were talking about amplifiers and MDUs, I've actually been to ones where there would be 3 or 4 like old 15 dB gain drop amps in the house box in the lock box.
Oh, Jesus.
and people would just move their outlets to get signal like constantly. So like it is very situational. Like that in itself is just a big rat's nest. But in general, I don't feel like they're needed. Um, I mean, they're great to have. The one thing I had mentioned before in a prior episode that we ran 2 drops a lot. Remember I mentioned that?
Yeah, you were saying.
Had the Mocha thing not come around, I like doing that because when we did that, I don't think I used. We had those gain amps, and I probably didn't use one for the first 2 years I had them.
See, and I still, for us, it would have never worked because when, and again, I left a year ago, so things could have changed since then, but everything was connected with Mocha and Home Health. So if we had a drop that came in and one hit our modem and the rest of it hit the X1 boxes, for example, we'd fail Home Health because the X1 box wouldn't see the modem on the Mocha.
Right? No. I said this was prior to the to
Oh,
actually
okay.
actually to us understanding the Mocha situation.
I see. Yes, which is
And this is back when DTAs and DCTs were the big deal,
yeah.
and they said okay, because the way they migrated that in, if you don't remember, is they came out and they said okay, from now on we got to keep every outlet under 51 or 53 or whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
and so every outlet in the house has to be that. So, but they didn't tell us why, right? They just said okay, every outlet has to be a 50, 53. I think it was 53.
I think we were at 50.
Well, this is originally when they were getting ready to do Mocha.
No,
But
it was
they
still
didn't tell
50
us they
for
were.
us.
Well, our spec back then was actually 54, and they
See, and
said
we
that
heard other parts of the country had it higher, but we were still 50.
yeah, 53 or 54. I want to say 54 was our original metric, and then they come in and said every outlet has to be under 53. Well, when we got under 53 is when we started running 2 drops. So our supervisor's like, okay, you can't get enough, run an additional drop to the house. So that was just the way we did it. But then, a year passed, 6 months, a year, whatever. They're like, all right, well, this is how. And then this guy come in from like Philadelphia, and he sat down and he had this training class with us one morning and said, well, this is how Mocha works. And I remember Rick got up and just kind of walked away. He's like, what the fuck? we just spent like a year running 2 drops of like a million houses. So then we had to go back and fix all that shit. But if it wasn't for Mocha, I felt like that would be a better option if there was tap space.
Yeah.
But in the most of the time, like I said, splitters aren't, or not splitters, amplifiers aren't needed. They're, to me, if I can home run everything, I got a 4-way there, I got a clean drop, we should be good to go.
And so we're covering step by step on an install. So we covered from everywhere from walking up to the front door, greeting the customer, and assessing, from the tap to the ground block, the splitters and amplifiers, and I think our biggest thing, actually, and we're going to call this our CATV Tech Talk tip number 3. Don't put 15 dB gain amps behind the TVs. If you're boosting shitty signal, it's still shitty signal. Even though it looks like it's higher, it still sucks.
Yeah. Don't fucking be that guy.
No. So more or less in a nutshell, if you don't have to use an amplifier, don't waste your time.
Try to bypass them as much as you can.
Absolutely, they're good for when needed, but if you don't need it, don't waste time.
It'll save you problems in the long run, man.
And so we'd work in from the ground block, go to the splitters, and then after we kind of assess how everything's split, I think that's usually when we start, at least I would start assessing. Mr. Backwards might be different, but I would start assessing my AOs, see how bad in shape. I would try to scan each one for ingress, figure out if I needed to actually take out any of those splitters and make more home runs. I was very lucky where I worked up here. It was a lot of just single floor cape houses. And most of them had just single floor basements. You'd go in the basement and they'd usually be one line going through, and it would just be split, here, the next one, the next. It was just daisy chain through the entire house. If I had the opportunity to home run everything back, I absolutely would. I'd take the time to do it. And it sucks because I get it. Guys are probably listening going, well, I wish I had time to do that. And I get it. Half these guys don't have enough time to wipe their ass, for Christ's sake. But I feel like it's one of those things where if you assess each AO, you check for ingress, you take out any splits possible to try to make it a home run. I think that's where you're going to save yourself the repeat as well.
Yeah, and don't splice it.
No,
don't run a line 60 feet and then leave 5 feet of shit left because you don't want to push it up through the floor or through the wall.
Yeah, and that I agree with you. Like, if you do have an AO that's, we'll say it's 35 feet away, 20 feet in, it has originally there was a two-way splitter there because the guy had a TV in the basement and one up on the first floor. Put a barrel there. I think it's okay, long as the line's not too old or too, if the line's a 59 line, just replace it. So you don't have to splice it. Just replace the entire thing. So we assess all that. We do our AOs and the equipment. Now, would you bring your equipment in when before you would do your drop? Would you start setting everything up, or would you?
No, like I said, dude, I was always out in Egypt, and I probably should have got my shit together at some point early. But like, I would have, before I would even touch equipment, I would have everything. All I would have to do is walk in with the equipment and start hooking shit up.
Okay.
I'd already my drops run, my house box mounted, my ground's up, my ground block, my splitters, whatever I used at that install, my lines are run, the connectors are on everything. All I had to do was hook up the equipment. I'd already ran my home cert or home health. I've already checked levels. All I literally have to do is hook up equipment. That would be the moment that I started bringing stuff in. Now, there have been instances like where I needed, like I was putting wall plates on or whatever, and I needed jumpers for the wall plates. So I was like, well, I'll just cut these out here and I'll get my stuff together. So, but that's like a one-off.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I wouldn't even bring equipment in until I had everything done.
Yeah, and I mean, I was the same way. That would be the last thing I'd pretty much do. And one of the things that, do you remember the call centers? They used to have those red bags.
Yeah, we talked about this.
Yeah, I know we talked about another episode, and I'm going to put that one in here as the CATV Tech Talk tip number 4, I believe. Is those little bags are great. They're great for bringing equipment in. They're great for bringing trash out. I would use them all the time. I would take one of those little red bags. I'd put all my boxes in it, my remotes, until they started vacuuming sealing the remotes with the boxes, HDMIs, so on and so forth. And what I'd do is I'd walk around to each outlet and I'd put the box down that goes there. I'd put the remote down that goes there. That way, if anybody showed up to help me, everything was already at the TV. There was no questions to be asked. But then I'd take that red bag back around with me. And as I'm opening up all this crap, I'm just throwing the trash right in the bag. So it's easy to clean up. It's easy to bring it in. It looks professional. And really it makes it a lot easier, in my opinion, to set up equipment. Is just having, and even if you don't get these fancy bags, even a simple box, just a box to throw all the crap in. So as you're walking around, you got everything right there with you.
Absolutely, man. That's cool. Because I did something similar. But I just didn't use those bags. I told you before in one of our other episodes that I had that DeWalt tool bag that was like real big and deep.
Yep.
I would literally go through the house putting things where they go, and then the last one I dropped is where I would start hooking stuff up. So like if I had 4 rooms, I'm going room to room dropping where stuff goes, and wherever I ended up, the last room is where I would start hooking up equipment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then back.
I'd work my way back, and I'd throw the garbage in that tool bag, and the end of the day or the next morning, I'd throw all that. Depending on where I'm at or whatever, I'd throw it away the next day.
Yeah, and then at the end of putting the equipment in and getting all that squared away, it's every technician's favorite part of the job, customer ed. Because we all love showing that 85-year-old adorable little old lady how to get to Turner Classic Movies, and it just ends up being a nightmare. I mean, I love these.
I was a little bit too much of an asshole to be. Like,
come on. Nursing homes, though, you couldn't have been an asshole in nursing homes.
Oh, here we go. All right, yeah, I knew it was coming. this is a funny story about an install at a nursing home. I was at this nursing home when I wasn't real young as being a tech. I don't know, I'd been in the field like a year and a half or something. All right, so I'm at this nursing home the same time that this contractor's there to do an install, but I'm doing a trouble call literally right across the hall. So I'm over there and I'm in this room with this woman, and I'm pretty sure she has dementia because I was showing her that I put it on channel 4, right? and as soon as I'd be like, do you understand? You change channels here. Don't touch this one. I'd walk out and she'd like start beating on the wall, screaming at me. She'd grab the wrong remote. And this went on forever. And I finally walked down to like the nurse's station, and she got the maintenance guy, and I showed the maintenance guy what to do. So he like took her actual TV remote and put it up or something somewhere. He knew where it was and knew what to do. Well, as I'm coding it and I'm leaving, that contractor was already gone. I get a trouble call at the room that the contractor was just at. Now, this was within a 30, 45-minute time frame, right?
Yep.
So I turned around, walked right back in, and the woman's like, yeah, this man said that it'd be on 20 minutes ago. And you know how them DTAs would sit there and just blink, one blink if they didn't have any. So I'm like, fuck. So I pulled the wall plate off. There's not even a damn line in the wall. He just hooked it up and just left. Well, I'm like, shit. So, how this worked, I had to drill through a firewall, and I had to run a line through drop ceiling about, I don't know, 100 feet through a drop ceiling. This is no lie. All the way to the apartment, to the box, the lockbox in the utility closet. Well, I got signal on, and I got the damn thing on, and I was sitting there. I was like, okay, ma'am, the TV needs to stay on channel 4, and, here's your channel lineup, yada, yada, yada. Okay, sweetheart, blah, blah, So as soon as I walk out the door, the nurse lady's like trying to flag me down. I go right back in. The lady that I just spent an hour and a half running a line through a damn drop ceiling. She's got the TV on HDMI too. So I change it and I hide her TV remote. And I shit you not, the next fucking day, there's a repeat on me. Now it says multi-repeat because I repeated the contractor for just hooking up the damn thing and walking out, right? And then I ran the damn line down the hall, and I told Rick, I said, oh, hell no. I'm not taking a repeat on that fucking job. Hell no. I told him what it was. He just kind of shook his head. I'm like, I fucking run a line 100 feet down a damn hallway through a firewall. Fuck you. I'm not taking a repeat on that.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so that customer education shit, man, there's some that, in today's age, I feel like we're at a time where people are very techie, if that makes sense. So, like,
yeah,
there's a majority of people that, like, okay, I understand it needs to stay on this input, I understand this is how I get the on-demand or whatever the fuck, right? But then there's still a demographic that are so far behind. I'll use my dad as an example. My dad got his first smartphone like a month ago, and this fucking guy can't call me to save his life. And when he texts me something, it says K. Like, that's all he can figure out how to do. And he's like lost, right? And like every time he gets his TV on the wrong input or something, I got to fix it. Like there's still that demographic of people.
Yeah.
So, it's like anything. Like it took, 30 years to get rid of VCRs, and DVD players are becoming less and less now, right? Yeah. Like it's like anything else. I think in the future, customer education is going to be very simple. But during our time, it really sucked.
I mean, I was lucky enough where I had X1. I think with customer education, it's really about adapting to that specific customer. I actually joke all the time with my wife about this. It's, especially as somebody who goes into people's houses, every week, multiple times a week, you get to learn how people are just based off the first 5 minutes of being in there. And I think once you kind of grab that aspect and how what type of customer you have in front of you, it makes everything a lot easier. If it's a young customer, you know, you're not going to sit there and yap their ear off because they don't care what you're saying. They just want to use their internet, get on Pornhub, do what they have to do before they have to go to work at McDonald's at, you know, 8 o'clock that night. And I get that. That makes sense. But then, like you said, you have your elderly customers that you kind of have to go a little more above and beyond for. The input issue that always seems to be a common issue. One of the things that's great for that is I know a lot of the newer TVs, Samsung has it, Sony has it. You can actually go into the menu and you can disable those inputs. So you can make it so that customer, no matter what button they hit, they can't jump off that input. Now, if that customer has a DVD player, it might be a little different. Again, if our customer is struggling that much with it, I don't think that part's going to be an issue. The other thing and I'll put this as the CATV Tech Talk tip number 5. And again, please do not hold any of this to me. I'm going to say it to be clear right now. I am talking about your remote. I am talking about the remote that your company provides you to give to the customer. A lot of the time, what I would end up doing is I would take out my pocket knife and I would actually cut buttons off the remote. Again, I think it's a great CATV Tech Talk tip. Cutting the buttons off have saved a tremendous amount of repeats. We had customers that would continuously call back. I picked up this trick from I actually believe it was a contractor. I gave it a shot, and man, the amount I use that tip for the rest of my career. I have cut more buttons off of remotes than probably taps I have climbed.
That's awesome, dude. I would have never thought to do that. The biggest thing is I was as a tech in general. I was kind of a one-trick pony, man. I was good with RF levels, the signal level. I was great with it. I was good with cable math. I could fix problems with RF levels. As things evolved and got more and more, like when I'm off work, I didn't go to Walmart and play with TVs, right?
Yeah.
Like I had a little 25-inch TV. I watched football and I drank beer. So like I didn't like really keep up with as things changed. Yeah. But I would always fix the level issues, which for me, 99% of the time, I had great metrics. So I felt like as long as I took care of the signal problems, everything else would kind of fall into line. Now, I had my few repeats over stupid shit that was, input related or, them damn, what were those, NIC cards? Is that what those were that we put in the back of those desktop computers?
I actually never had to do that. When I started with Comcast, they stopped doing that.
See, they quit like 6 months after I started, and I only had to do it once, and I think I fucked it up, or I'm sure I did.
Comcast stopped doing it.
Yeah, I think I got a repeat on that, and like dumb shit, like like I got a repeat one time. This was something I didn't even do, and I told the guy, I said, this has nothing to do with our service. He had a projector in his backyard for his pool, right?
Yep.
Like he had a pool, and then there was like a big white wall. I guess that's what you call it. It's a big block wall that run around the backside of the pool. And he had a projector that he was wanting to use, but he didn't have anything ran from the projector to where we could set up a box, right?
Yep.
And I'm like, well, dude, I can't run 60 feet of, back then you could use component cables or something,
Yep.
I was like, or an HDMI cable. I don't have 60 feet of that. Dude, the guy called in a repeat. It said no picture. And the fucking guy that went out there repeated me and put no problem found. I was like, you fucking prick.
Yeah.
But, there's those things that happen, But, in general, I feel like since we're kind of at the end of this, check your wall plates. If you're in a new build, that's a big deal.
Yeah, specific things to remember. Things that are very important on installs that people tend to miss or forget. Those
connectors behind wall plates. I actually read a stat. Charter Communications, they said that 70% of all repeat trouble calls are connector related. Okay, they're connector related. 70%. That's a big number. So if nothing else, all new builds need it. Apartments, I would pull them off. Like if you're in a condo or something, I'd always pull your wall plates because
Well,
most of the time you're going to get those builders that take a pocket knife and put those fucking screw-on connectors on,
yep.
and it's going to cause you you're going to get a repeat off of it.
100%. And if it's an install, you should be doing it anyways.
Absolutely.
Because you should be replacing that wall plate as well as that barrel.
Yeah, absolutely you should. Most of the time, they're those little gold barrels they buy at Lowe's, and you can't even get a connector all the way on it. While we're going down this list, I'll say this. If you're at like a condo or a duplex or a nursing home or a new build house that you don't have to replace all the outlets, they're all home run, they're all new, you still need to check for ingress.
Yes.
And that's a huge, huge thing because especially with these guys just slapping those amps in there now,
yep,
it just amplifies the ingress if you don't fix it. So you need to have if you're going to use an amplifier, make sure the house is clean, please, because I was a system tech and trying to find that shit really sucks sometimes. With that being said, it's going to help. It's going to help you. I promise if you got a clean house, clean signal, your chances of getting a repeat call drastically reduce.
But no, ingress, I agree. Ingress, I feel, is one of those things a lot of guys end up skipping. Tighten your fittings. I remember hearing a statistic during an LOB one time. They say that if you do not tighten your cable connection with a wrench, within 1 year, that cable connection will turn itself 720 degrees just from the vibration in the house alone. If you're on a main street where you live, it will actually turn even faster. And that's, I mean, you're probably not going to get a cable connection that backs out in 30 days, but that third 5 to 7 that they're giving you a year later, that's going to make you extra late to go out with your buddies that night could have been prevented if, maybe you tightened it with your wrench a year before.
Absolutely, man. That's a big deal. And, a lot of times, especially in pre-wired houses, if just by replacing the wall plates and the jumpers, you're killing most of the ingress that would have been there anyway.
Now, what would you say is the best time to check for ingress at the point of an install?
If you're rewiring everything, I wouldn't even fucking worry about it.
Nah, we can't say that though, because I know we put the in there, but
if you rewire every outlet and have every connection and you've tightened everything down, it's almost. You could for shits and giggles, but for me, if you're at, you have a house like a pre-wired house, I would check it when I start. Like when I start, I would check it if everything, if there's I'd put everything on a 4-way outside and I'd check it.
Yep.
And then if I had ingress on something or a 4-way or 8-way, whatever I'm doing, I'd disconnect until I found the one I needed. And then I would tone that line and I'd figure out where it's coming from. And then if it was a pre-wired house, I'd take all the wall plate jacks off. I'd tighten everything, replace all the connectors and jumpers. I'd come back out, check it again. I'd usually do it like as I'm putting the ground block together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's when I would kind of clean up the house. The drop side, if you rerun the drop and you tighten it at the tap, what are you really shooting at that point? It's just a big jumper. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't sweat that. But for me, if we're in a pre-wired house we're working on, I would do it as I'm putting my ground block together. I'm running a ground, whatever, I'm putting connectors outside. I'd put everything hooked up and I'd check it right there. And if I had any, then I'd start finding it and troubleshooting
it. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Again, that's Jesse's answer, not mine. I can't say it's the wrong one because, again, I think we all do we do things our own way. If you had good numbers, it shows. I think that if you are a new technician, I think it's important to check for ingress right after you finish if you were to do it by numbers, step 4, when we were done with our AOs, I feel like that's a perfect time to check for ingress. Hit your ground block, scan the entire house for ingress. Obviously, don't hook up your equipment and then scan for ingress. Make sure you do it with all your equipment off, but you got all your brand new AOs in, all your brand new jumpers. Again, techs that have been doing this for a while, they're probably just going to be like, Drew, what are you talking about? This is stupid. Shut up. Just move on to the next thing. But for these new guys, I unfortunately have seen them cut fittings, and that center conductor hits that, or I mean, the braid hits that center conductor, and you don't pick it up, and that's a repeat down the road. So even though everything's brand new, it doesn't mean things can't still fail. So I think that it's important. You should still scan for ingress right before you put the equipment in.
Well, the reason I said it that way, if I ran everything, and not saying I'm right, I never once scanned it for any noise. I was just like, fuck it. Everything's new. I'm confident in what I did. The only time I did was when I was working with pre-existing cable.
Yeah.
And that's my theory. And I had good metrics, so you can kiss my ass.
And that's why I say it's not necessarily the wrong way to do it. It's what worked for you. But again, you're talking based off of experience. And as time
right, absolutely, yeah.
And, these new technicians listen, you're not necessarily going to have to be scanning every time. Now, if you are trying very hard for progression and you're trying to hit your numbers and you really want to advance, this is something I suggest you do. If you truly don't give a fuck, I don't care what you do. You can Jesse into it in any order you want. One big thing, well, not one big thing, but maybe we'll put this to CATV Tech Talk tip number 6. Just replace the drop. You're there to do an install. The customer's there to have you do a brand new product. If you did not replace it a week before they got there, I just replace it. You have the time, just do it. You don't pay for the cable. You get paid to be there. Just replace the drop.
I'll throw something into that to make it even more impressive. When I was in new hire class, there was a guy in Pennsylvania that was a tech that they had sent an email out to all the trainers that said this guy replaced every drop at every job he went to for 30 days. And they did it as a trial, right, to see how much that affected numbers. And he had 0% repeats.
See, there you go. So you heard it from the ass's mouth. You fucking do that drop, man. You're good. You're clean. And besides a drop, what's pretty much the number one, always replace it every time you see it? What is it, Jeff?
59 lines.
50 fucking 9 lines. Just do it. Don't. I just
don't splice into that fucking shit. Don't do it.
Maybe, which is still not acceptable.
Don't fucking tell these young guys a bunch of preaching shit about you need to check ingress and replace a drop and then barrel into some shitty ass 59 cable. Don't do that shit, man.
If there's no ingress and it's for a DTA, maybe. And that's like, if you can't replace it, it's fucking negative 20 degrees out, there's a fucking nor'easter going sideways, and you just want to fucking go home and watch the fucking game. I get it. But
you can only do it though, but if there's a football game on, right? Is that what you said?
Well, no, for me it would be hockey, but yeah, okay.
Y'all fucking Yankees, man.
Oh, fuck.
No, in all seriousness, man, replace that shit. The shielding on it's not as good as RG6. It's susceptible to ingress way more than anything else you'll deal with.
Yeah.
The connectors suck. The connectors suck, and there's some of the center conductors are fucking like you can barely touch them and they'll like break.
Have you ever seen the RG59 where you look down the center conductor at the dielectric and it looks like a little piece of macaroni? It actually has a hollow dielectric.
Yeah.
I am going to put this. It really should have been my CATV Tech Talk tip number 1. Booties get you tips. They watch it on the commercials. You put those stupid little thing on your boots, and that freaking customer goes apeshit. They think it's the greatest thing ever. They don't give a damn that they can get Netflix and get this high. They see those booties, and that's what they're telling everybody about. I know it's stupid. Guys get their balls busted for it all the time. If it's nice out, if you don't have shit on your boots, you walk in on a solid driveway to wooden steps and you don't have anything on your feet, I understand it. And I can't say I wore booties into every house. If it's raining, I think you're stupid not to wear them. Again, they just love it. They go Google over that shit, and you get more tips than none wearing booties. So
well, don't be like me since I'm ass backwards. My third day on the job, I took my boots off.
Oh my God! Rule number 1: don't take your boots off. Well, I'm not walking barefoot through somebody's freaking gross house.
No. You didn't let me finish.
Oh, okay.
I was on a real bad hangover. Okay.
Oh yeah, this fucking story got way better.
Yeah. I was really hungover and like half sick. And I was actually, I think I was in training. I think it's like the third or fourth day I was like on the job. And I'm riding around with this weird guy who listened to like Ron Paul radio all day. And it was really fucking boring. And I had a pounding ass headache. So I get to, and it's raining and I don't have any booties. So I'm like, you know what? No, I did have booties. No, I didn't. No, I got bags. I put bags on my shoes to walk through the yard. And then I took my bags off and I used my boots in the house. And then I put the bags on when I went outside.
There you go. That's a creative way to do it. It's, again, Jesse's ass backwardness. He does his installs backwards. He wears fucking booties backwards. I mean, Jesus Christ, dude, I'd hate to watch you wipe your ass.
I do it from the front, so yeah. I'm just kidding, man.
All right, man. I think this was pretty good. I hope that some new guys definitely got some good tips out of it. Again, I
just hope everybody enjoys us shooting the shit about things we did and how we did it.
And I just truly hope nobody takes anything serious that Jesse says and tries to put it towards their career. Because again, we try to put that disclaimer out there. No, I'm just kidding. Jesse's really actually a pretty smart guy. But listen, if we had answers that you thought were bullshit, if we said something you didn't like, tell us. Let us know how you feel. Reach out to us. If you think our questions suck, you think our topics suck, we're, not talking about something you want to hear, tell us what you guys want to hear.
Absolutely. We'll talk about whatever you guys enjoy. We just want to kind of, we have so much we can go over for so long. We want to just keep going and have you guys listen on a weekly basis and have fun with it.
And it's not what me and Jesse just want to talk about. It's what you guys want to hear.
Yeah, because if that was the case, we'd be talking about college football and how LSU got beat last night, and I laughed real big.
I'm not the sports guy, unfortunately. I'm just going to leave that one alone. But
yeah, he's a fucking hockey fan. Come on, man.
And I don't even have time to watch that. But in all seriousness, we do this for our techs. We do this, and not just for techs. This is for anybody that's in the cable industry, whether you're in dispatch. Unfortunately, dispatch and techs don't always get along, but me and Jesse are very unbiased. We're here for everybody. Again, the contractors, the dispatchers, even the higher ups that want to listen to us and not tell their friends because they probably shouldn't be because it's inappropriate. We want to put what you guys want to hear. So again, if there's anything that you want to hear, any ideas that you have, if you want to be a guest on the show, talk to us about what you do, drop us a line. Again, in the show notes, you'll see all the information below. You can find our podcast on iTunes, wherever you get your podcast, that's where you'll find us. But yeah, we're excited to do this. And again, we want to hear what you guys want. So let us know. Tell us. Jesse, how do you feel about today's episode? It's pretty good, right?
I feel like you do shit backwards.
No, man, you do shit ass backwards. Again, freaking.
I was Tech of the Year one year, bitch.
Yeah, so was I. The last year I worked there, I won a Tech of the Year award, and it was very embarrassing to say that I won it.
And on top of that, I won that Voice of the Customer too. So maybe I'm pretty good at customer education, or I was really good at bullshit. I'm not sure which one, but they gave me a bonus when I was doing it, so that's cool.
Well, and I think that's what's cool about these different episodes too, because you kind of just said it there. All these different things we talk about, they can all be their own episode, their own. We were talking about Ingress. Ingress could be, oh my God. I mean, I'm sure people wouldn't want to hear it, but we could have shows for probably 2 hours.
Yeah, I think this was good because I think we were able to kind of give guys ideas on how to do things like the way we did it. Not necessarily like we said that it's the right way.
But it was
the best thing to finish this out would be, find your niche the way you feel comfortable doing things that you feel is efficient for you, and stick to it like a routine, like the way you wipe your ass, as Drew would say.
No, and I have to agree. I think once you get a solid routine built and you stick to it, and it just becomes mindless. You go in, you do it, and you're done before you know it. So.
And your numbers will improve over time that way too.
Absolutely, long as you don't do it like Jesse suggested. So before he says anything else, I'm going to end today's episode. We'll catch you guys next time.
See ya.
Later. Like what you just heard? Then don't forget to click that subscribe button. Questions for the host or just want to say hello? You can email us at catvtechtalk@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/catvtechs. Thanks again for joining us, and don't forget, climbing, crawling, drilling, driving is just the beginning.